Wow.
You're going to like this.
Oh, no, I'm not. Because there is no goddamn middle.
This is not unlike ancient Rome, by the way.
Not so much the family circus. Yeah. Yeah, when I did Mary Shelley, I had the same issue with necromancy.
A lot of them wanted to create self-sustaining farms and got into crystals.
I know.
Okay.
I understand that.
But yeah, I'm reading Livy, who is a shitty historian.
Because Eerie Gygax.
Others say that because Laurentia's body was common to all the shepherds around, she was called a she-wolf, which is a Latin term for whore. You were audible last season. It just, most of it was you slamming the table.
As the Romanists at the table. Well, duh.
Yeah.
Obviously, ipso facto.
Right.
You know, to engage in one of my
Ipso
own dog
facto.
Latin.
You have a sword rack.
This is a geek history of time,
where we connect nerdery to the real world. My name is Ed Blaylock. I'm a history teacher here in Northern California, teaching middle schoolers about the wonders of multiculturalism by exposing them to the history of different groups other than our own. I am also a very proud father of a 2-year-old little boy who has decided that dinosaurs are just about the coolest thing in the world, which I think is a pretty normal developmental phase. Mm-hmm. He doesn't seem to quite understand the separation line between dinosaurs and dragons, which
most
I'm
cultures
okay with.
didn't. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's who I am. Who the heck are you, sir?
I'm Damian Harmony. I'm a Latin teacher up here in Northern California, feverishly recording content in case districts decide to do things the right way, and using ancient texts to get people closer to understanding each other in all kinds of fun ways. I have a 8-year-old who just lost her top tooth, and a 10-and-a-half-year-old, both of whom I'm now teaching Latin. So we're going to thrive one way or the other.
There you go.
Yeah,
That
we will summon. They say if you say Latin the wrong way, you summon a demon. They're close. We summon lemons. So we're one letter off.
I can vouch to our listeners for the truth of this. Every so often there'll be a message on Facebook: lemons, you need them. I got them. Come get them, please.
Yeah. And last week,
after about a week, the tone becomes pleading.
Yes, come get your damn lemons.
Yeah.
So, and just last week we summoned an imp accidentally, and I don't recommend it because you know what they say: imping ain't easy.
All right, and we're like less than 3 minutes.
Yeah, we're 2:25 for that one.
2:25, right?
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, thou 3-inch fool.
Yeah. So
I'm gonna get literally Shakespearean.
Yeah, please do
with my responses.
So
yeah.
So last time we ended with we've been talking about the Far Side. And in order to talk about the Far Side, of course, we had to get into French existentialism and theater of the absurd and Alfred Jarry. Yeah. So, you do. And we ended with
like you do.
We ended with Mad Magazine last time. And just kind of getting into what Gary Larson himself was reading and consuming in terms of media, in terms of what he was watching as a kid, because that does absolutely inform what you do with it. And he did have an older brother who scared him on the regular, and he did live in Puget Sound area, so he had access to a lot of what do you call that? Flora and fauna.
Exploding whales.
Yeah, that too. So all of this is going on. He decides to go off to college, and at first he majors in biology, and then realizes he doesn't want to, and he majors in communications instead. Once he got out of college,
No, I'm just
Oh,
sorry,
okay.
indicating
Sorry.
I was listening.
Yep.
Okay.
And once he got out of college, the world was, I'd say, in some ways scarier and at the same time less scary. We've spoken many a time about how the existential fear of nuclear explodiness ends up fading into the background. And in some ways, that lack of hypervigilance on it makes it more dangerous. I would just like to point out that when a fear of a thing fades to the background, people care less, and then it becomes more of a danger to them. Because I think that is something we could all do well to remember right now.
Yes. In this particular moment.
Yes.
Yes.
So, nuclear annihilation, very scary, background noise, still very friendly or frightening, but you do tend to make friends with it in some way. While he was looking for work, he starts cartooning. Gary Larson does. And he sold his single-frame cartoons to a local magazine in Seattle. And in 1979, and his story is just such an interesting story of like, oh shit, that's literally how they did it back then. Like, have you ever heard the story of how D.B. Cooper just like went up and bought an airplane ticket and then got on and didn't even give his real name?
Yeah.
Like, you could just do that, right?
Yeah. You could just
Gary
walk
Larson,
up, buy a ticket, pay cash.
yeah, whatever, and not even give them your name. It didn't matter.
Nope.
Gary Larson walked into the Seattle Times.
What are you gonna do? Are you gonna try to charge the cabin or something? Like
Right.
what? Come on.
So in 1979, he walks into the Seattle Times and he says, "Hey, how'd you like to buy my strip?" And they look at it and they go, "Okay." Like that. Yeah. Like, because that's how it happened. And so they took on his comics as a weekly comic strip. And continuing from here, he went down to, and he's barely making money at it. He's barely, I don't know that he's necessarily making rent, but back then rent wasn't more than half your income anyway, so it was okay. But he then goes to San Francisco on a bit of a trip, and he walks into the San Francisco Chronicle and says, "Hey, how'd you like my cartoon?" And they say, "Yeah, we would. We're going to rename it." And he didn't care. And in January of 1980, he even
if you pay me, you can call it whatever the hell you want.
He actually had a quote where he said almost exactly that. I didn't write it down because I've got enough research in here. But
well, it's the Winston Zedmore school of making a living. Like, dude, pay me.
Yeah, it's call it whatever you want. Just give me the money so I can make the rent. And so in January of 1980, his comic started, and from then up, it exploded. And so I want to take a look at just some fun facts about his comics and then analyze them a little bit, and then see what through lines we can draw. No pun intended there. So here's some fun statistics. Nearly 14% of his comics have wild animals in them.
Okay.
About
14?
Yep.
You say?
14.
Okay.
About 12% have dogs specifically. About 10% have scientists. Just under 8% have bugs. Just under 8% have snakes. And just under 8% are dealing with prehistoric things.
Really? It's that low for prehistoric stuff?
I know. You think about what sticks out in your head, though, right?
Yeah, well, the Thagomizer hopefully doesn't stick out in your head.
It will. 6% deal with the Old West. 6% deal specifically with hell. And here was a thing that
Welcome to hell. Here's your accordion.
Right, or aerobics in hell. And here's the one that really got me. Only 6% deal with cows.
Bullshit.
Well, yes, that too.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just find that funny. So Gary Larson's Far Side has been, you're still stymied by that. I know.
I really am.
But just think about, like, I can think of like
sick Marvin,
4,
sick. Cow
car,
tools.
Yeah. Car.
Yeah. Car. Yeah.
And then there's one where they're walking into someone's house.
Yeah.
And then there was, you start running out pretty quick.
Yeah. Like, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
They're iconic, but yeah, precious.
Yeah.
So now 6% of his comics is still a really huge number. I would also like to point that out, that even though it sounds like a low percentage, it's still an exceptionally large number, and we would do well to remember that as well.
Well, yeah.
This will not age.
No. It'll be this as a historical document. This will very clearly be from a very specific period in time.
Yeah.
So he started in the San Francisco Chronicle in what, 81?
January of 80.
80. Okay, and he retired in
95.
95. Okay, so 15 years at a published comic a day, 7 days a week. So 15 years times 365 panels. I had a cocktail earlier this evening, and now I'm into a beer. So I mean, I can't do the math in my head, but that's a lot of comics.
It really is. It really is.
And those are the ones that got published. Anybody who's a creative, anybody who does writing, anybody who does anything like that knows that's if you're really hot, that's like 50% of what you actually start trying to draw.
Right.
Or write.
Yeah.
The man was a machine.
He was. I know that he was carried in almost 2,000 newspapers. But I don't remember how many. I wrote it down somewhere, as maybe it'll pop up later. I don't remember how many Far Side cartoons he actually did.
Do you have it there? What syndicate he was signed with?
No, and that's the thing. He ultimately signed with several, but he essentially shopped it around and did it his way, like the way that I described. That was more his style. So just and
Wow.
people would like pass it on. Yeah, it's so the Far Side has been analyzed as satire in the past, and it is definitely satire, but it's verbal satire and visual satire. It's not satire on the culture so much as playing with a language and playing with just thoughts. It's like thought experiment satire. It's odd to see snakes sitting in easy chairs talking to each other at a party.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing.
It's surrealism.
Yeah.
Which is a cousin of the kind of stuff that you see in Theater of the Absurd, that you see in
definitely a predecessor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or predecessor or antecedent. I guess those are the same thing. But yes, it does come from that tradition. And it's an inversion of the accepted reality. So it's a send up of agreed upon conventions and realities, right? And in many ways, it is, because it's in single panel form, it is very similar to Ionesco's efforts at Theater of the Absurd. It's self-contained. It exists as a logic within itself, and then you're done. And it's absurd.
Okay. There's no overarching,
right. There's no plot
cultural
lines.
Yeah. Okay.
In many ways, his Far Side is akin to Rod Serling's Twilight Zone, except that the morality play in every episode is not nearly as overt as it was with Rod Serling. But he also had bottle episodes. So I find it interesting that he grew up watching these kinds of bottle episodes. And this was the predominant form of art that he took when he did it as a visual medium.
Well, yeah, and the thing is, there's a conciseness to that format. Like if you're doing a gag-a-day comic in a 4-panel, 5-panel, whatever format. There's a specific as a comic. You can probably comment more on this than delve into this a little bit more.
Premise, setup,
but you have to have premise, setup, punchline.
Yep.
Whereas with what he's doing, you just throw it up there.
He's doing the equivalent to a
it's
one-liner.
all kind of self-contained, and you don't have to. Yeah, you don't have to worry about figuring out the way to pace it visually.
Right.
You don't have to worry about,
The mise en scène.
tying one image to the next image.
Right.
None of that is a concern. You have it's easier, and I'm sure that Larson would probably say, 4-panel, 5-panel, strip comic is not something I wanted to do because that was just too much work. But the thing is, what's brilliant about what he did is it's really hard to be that efficient,
that elegant
with reducing yes, elegant in the classical scientific sense of elegance.
And there's only a couple where it left people wondering, like the Cow Tools one, for instance. He had to explain it. There's so few that he had to explain because it's all self-contained in there.
Yeah.
I loved it, right? So he but interestingly, here's a parallel, right? So both the Twilight Zone and the Far Side, which, by the way, are literally a place that is otherworse. The Twilight Zone is somewhere there. The Far Side is somewhere over there. They're also at a place that is not here and a time that is not now. They're both fairly timeless. And they both are critiquing the times in which they live. The difference is the Twilight Zone's totally doing it on purpose, and I think Gary Larson's falling over backward into it. Both of them are looking at the marionette effect that those times had on humanity, though. And that those times had on language, and that those times had on expectation. So they are both offering a distorted view to get at a larger truth that we'd rather not confront. The difference is Twilight Zone did that on purpose. Far Side seemed to have done that accidentally.
Okay. Because it's really, really like ridiculously obvious that Serling, we talked about it in our Twilight Zone episodes, Serling had a point with a capital P.
Yes.
Like, the night is particularly dark in Alabama and Mississippi.
Exactly.
There's really no getting around what you're trying to say there in 1960, whatever it was when that episode aired. No. There is an anvil being dropped here.
Yes. Yes.
And Larson, as you said, he was playing around with words, playing around with concepts and ideas and thoughts, and flipping things around, making them absurd. And the commentary that creates on his times is indirect.
Yes.
And what you really, to see The Far Side as a commentary on the 80s into the 90s, you really have to do what we do in this podcast, which is really take a look at it and go, okay, well, all right, but like, what's he saying here?
What did he mean to do versus what did he do?
Yeah, authorial intent ain't shit, as we like to say here. And in his own conscious mind, what he was just trying to do was just, oh, hey, this is clever, and put it down.
Right.
But there's no way to do that outside of the context in which you are doing it.
Exactly.
The historical time, the historical context.
And to have been influenced by living in absurd times his whole life, where he had no say over his destiny the whole time. That's going to have an impact,
Okay.
Yeah. Whereas Rod Serling grew up a little earlier and he saw, Nazis on the rise, and that had an impact. So The Far Side does exactly what The Twilight Zone does, but with fewer words and with a single panel. It is clearly satire, even if Larson didn't mean it to be. Like, it's so funny that you got to that. And if you look at how he grew up as a young kid at reading Mad Magazine at a time where Mad was the only thing that kept us alive. And by Mad, I mean mutually assured destruction.
Yeah, okay.
So we touched on the prisoner's dilemma last time, and there's this weird flipperoo that happens in it where the rational thing will kill you, and so you have to hope that your leaders are irrational. And what the fuck kind of world is it where you live in, where your best hope is that your leaders are irrational and aren't going to try to save you, and that's what's going to save your life? Like, it's I can't wrap my mind. I mean, I've had friends who grew up with really shitty parents where, like, you know, if you said what you really, really liked, they'd take it away from them. So then you had to pretend not to like the thing that you really liked. And I saw how that messed up my friends. Now have a whole society that is dependent on that. And it just, wow.
Yeah, well, you know, and we got into this a little bit last time. But you know, I don't know how many courses you took in international relations, poli-sci, in college.
I took one specifically on that. I took a history of the Vietnam War class, a history of World War II class.
Okay.
So I would count that as 3.
Okay. Okay, all right.
Because those were both very much like, here's what got us into.
Speaking to
Yeah.
But the really pointy-headed game theory, you know, throw a computer at it and see, you know, what happens after, you know, 10,000 iterations. What depending on how the person running the experiment weighted the different results.
Sure.
The rational, and we may have, I don't remember whether I got into the details of this, but what they figured out over multiple different runs of the experiment over, you know, however many iterations, that it is actually rational to, in the classic scenario of prisoner's dilemma, shut up, don't say anything, up until the first time your partner, competitor, whatever, until the other player flips on you, at which point after that you flip on them every single time.
Right.
And the thing is, I feel like it's important to point out that when we look at the Cold War as a, you know, every morning, you know, Khrushchev had his finger planted on one button and Kennedy had his finger planted on the other button, you know, that's not actually how it worked. And it was a series of, are we going to go along? Are we going to, you know, how are we going to do it? And you know, the game was, we're going to keep cooperating. We're going to keep cooperating. We're going to keep cooperating until the other guy fucks us, at which point everybody dies.
Now you put that
so it was the rational decision not to push the button first.
Now
until, you know,
right. Let's accept that the first time someone does, that's pretty much going to end the game.
Yeah,
too.
well, yeah, game over, yeah.
So you plug back in your Camus, where the rational thing is to live without hope.
Okay.
You know, and if you and then you accept the absurdity of it all. Like, all of that is, you know, that's happening at the highest levels, but that's happening at the lowest levels. Like, none of it makes any goddamn sense. So as he's growing up, as Larson's growing up, the thing that keeps us alive is the guarantee of mutually assured destruction, which is the weirdest goddamn thing to keep you alive. And as he's growing, the tightened grip of conformity is unable to hold on, and it was shown for what it was. And with all the absurd background of our annihilation is happening too. So here you've got a country that professes to be the bulwark of freedom against conformist communism. And the way that you show that freedom is by so controlling society and limiting what all the expressions of art can be, that you squeeze all the liberty out of it, to the point where the only acceptable thing to do is Jackson Pollock type stuff, because then it has no meanings. So you can't have any kind of political expression in your art, even though art is inherently political, because if you do, then you are striking a blow against freedom by using your freedom. So we all have to conform so that we can be free. And it just, I mean, it's wow. Like, growing up in that, Yeah. So
Yeah.
he starts cartooning The Far Side in 1979, 1980, just as Ronald Reagan, a B-lister from Hollywood who'd become governor of California for 2 terms, because we have a really dumb history in this state, who had narrowly lost a primary against Ford in 76, was now starting to show signs that he's going to get the nod as the Republican nominee.
Yep.
And when you say it out loud like that, it really does sound pretty goddamn ridiculous and absurd. That he,
Yeah, it really does.
yeah,
It really, and
it's
and the thing is, when we were, I don't remember which episode it was, but when I was doing research on Reagan for a prior episode,
probably be Conan then.
Yeah, yes, it was. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was looking into the 1980 election, I, of course, only having been 5 years old, I wasn't paying any attention. So I hadn't remembered that there was actually another Republican who did run, and got a noticeable share of the vote because nobody actually, well, not nobody. There were plenty of people who really did like Reagan, but there were an awful lot of Republicans at the time who really didn't.
Yeah.
And there were an awful lot of Democrats who were disappointed in Carter.
Yeah.
And he himself called it national malaise.
Yeah.
And so nobody was happy about anything.
Yeah.
Like we're gonna vote for the cowboy from Burbank.
Yeah.
We're gonna vote for the Burbank cowboy because he's at least giving us this energetic seeming Pollyanna rosy view of ourselves and has all this hopeful rhetoric. So we're going to vote for him, but we don't really like him that much.
Well, and I'm gonna go one further with you. We're gonna vote for the guy who pretended to be a war hero over the guy who was an actual war hero.
Yeah,
like say what you will about Bush,
guy who actually was a naval veteran.
Yeah. So it just So in January of 1980, things didn't quite feel real. And how could they? The world was in a massive state of flux. The deadliest threat to humanity was just now a part of the background scenery, like the zombies in The Walking Dead. The Far Side was about life in a way that wasn't quite real. I mean, the name, first of all, The Far Side, right? And the typical juxtaposition between the caption, which is our version of Charon, guiding us from the real shore to the unreal far side of the river Styx. And the image, thank you, the image, which is the unreal underworld in which we are now transported, made for a really quirky set of humor.
Okay, yeah. You just managed to create an analogy, a set of symbolism there that went really dark.
Yeah,
there.
The 80s were a dark goddamn time.
But the 80s were full of primary colors, like.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
You're not wrong there, but yeah, at the same time.
I mean, yeah, no, the existential dread that hung over everything.
I mean, it got to the point where musicians thought that they could be saving the world because the people who were tasked with keeping us safe couldn't. So musicians started playing music in order to, like, We Are the World.
Yeah.
Live Aid.
Yeah.
We just have to hope that the Russians love their children too. Stuff like that. And life is just getting more and more absurd. This cartoon is perfect for the time. Ronald Reagan, the media man, becomes president, and he was called the Great Communicator, though he rarely said anything of substance. He spoke with comfortable slogans, and he used the language to say nothing and yet sound substantive. Here's a couple excerpts from his inauguration speech, okay? He's really good at making us feel comfortable while at the same time ramping up the existential threat to our lives. He's really good at that. And there's your juxtaposition. He's the caption, and look at this picture. And we collectively as a society, we're okay with it because at least it sounds nice, right? This should sound very parallel to Sartre's analysis of the polite German, by the way. So
okay.
Here's a quote from Ronald Reagan, 1981. Okay. I kind of want to do the voice, but I'm just going to sound like a bad version of Richard Belzer doing his voice, so I'm not going to do it. To a few of us here today, this is a solemn and most momentous occasion, and yet in the history of our nation, it is a commonplace occurrence. The orderly transfer of authority as called for in the Constitution routinely takes place as it has for almost 2 centuries, and few of us stop to think how unique we really are. In the eyes of many in the world, this every 4-year ceremony we accept as normal is nothing less than a miracle. So, I mean, we both grew up.
God, it was so nice back in the time when we could, take that for granted.
Yeah. So he thinks his presidency is starting with a miracle, ultimately. And it's a commonplace miracle, which in itself is a weird juxtaposition. So it makes us feel special. He mentions our uniqueness, despite there being no fewer than 20 others of similar democracies at the time. I went back and counted. There were 20 other countries that transferred power peacefully, democratically. And then he says,
okay,
the business of our nation goes forward. I have questions. What does that really mean? From where? What business? What is the business of our nation since we're not a command economy? Then he goes on. Those who do work are denied a fair return for their labor by a tax system which penalizes successful achievement and keeps us from maintaining full productivity. Again, he's using words with no substance. He used the phrase those who. That's deliberately vague. Do work is also very deliberately vague. Fair return, totally undefined. Successful achievement, what the hell does that even mean? And of course, he's doing the boilerplate stuff, going after the tax system because somehow taxing the rich is more, taxing them more is unfair all of a sudden. We must act today in order to preserve tomorrow. He's referring to the economy specifically, but again, no specifics. They will go away because we as Americans have the capacity now, as we have had in the past, to do whatever needs to be done to preserve this last and greatest bastion of freedom. Now, he's referring to the economic woes that took decades to take hold, okay? A rot within the system that finally clung in. It's interesting that he's calling on the very collectivism that he's disdaining, by the way, and in painting it in this light, he's making it acceptable and co-opting it again.
Well, okay. He's calling for collectivism in the sense of unity, common effort.
Sure.
But anybody who grew up in the Reaganite cult, for lack of a better word, will be able to. I mean, you're talking about how all of this language is meaningless and none of these terms are defined and all that. That's awesome, and you're right. But at the same time, you're also wrong, because his target audience knew exactly what it was that he was telling them in code.
So it's dog whistling.
It is. Well, dog whistling has a very specific racial connotation, and parts of that are dog whistling in that sense.
Parts of that speech that I've already read to you are
are that. But parts of it are class dog whistling rather than racial dog whistling, and parts of it are Protestant work ethic dog whistling, for lack of a better word. The
American mythos.
The American mythos and the ingrained idea that we have in this country that hustle is the key. Like That's just it.
If you just work harder.
And yeah, and then all of that about unfairly, not able to reach full productivity,
Right.
To tax system being unfair and all that stuff. That is 1,000% the clarion call of supply side economics, which the whole argument was. There's the overt argument, which is no. We're penalizing. If we continue penalizing rich people aren't going to want to invest their money in paying people more. So we got to let rich people have that money, so they'll have they'll have an incentive to do stuff with it.
Right.
Okay. Which okay, I understand the train of logic there, but having now lived through 40 years of essentially supply side economics being what both sides have done since Reagan.
Back it up a hair. During the primary, George Bush argued against it and said that's voodoo economics.
Oh yeah.
Then it was known as a canard.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. No. Yeah. Everybody. The thing is, anybody who knew anything about actual economic theory looked at it and went, "That's bullshit." That's no. And anybody who looked far enough back in history would go, "That's feudal." You understand? And that's feudal, and that's literally part of how the second estate got destroyed by the bourgeoisie and the peasant class during the French Revolution. Is like, well, but we're the nobility, we don't pay taxes.
Right.
Do you like keeping your head?
Yeah.
Because like, if you push that far enough long enough, you wind up telling somebody to eat cake.
Yeah.
And they cut your fucking head off.
Well, so here's what else. Oh.
All right. No, go ahead.
So,
I've ranted long enough. Carry on.
With the idealism and fair play, which are the core of our system and our strength, we can have a strong and prosperous America at peace with itself and the world. Oi. All right. Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth. The price for this freedom at times has been high, but we have never been unwilling to pay that price. Double oi. It's been more available.
Yeah, on paper, it's been more available.
Yeah.
In theory,
we've had to pay a... So he's saying it's been more available, but we've had to pay a supremely high price, but we've always been willing to pay, so it's always been available. And it's like, wait a minute. If you have to pay a really high price, then that means it wasn't available.
Well, okay, no, here's the thing. The thing. Cut him some slack.
Okay.
He graduated. He got his economics degree from the Baron Samedi School of Economics.
That's true.
So his grasp of supply and demand is not gonna be, perfect.
Sure.
Or exist. And when, the correctness of his rhetoric, I think, was much less important in the historical context than the magnetism of his rhetoric. Like when we're sitting here, you and I sitting here 40 years later. Jesus Christ! Anyway, fuck.
Yep.
But you and I sitting here decades later, having survived all of that, have the benefit of an awful lot of hindsight to be able to look back at that and go, that's clown shoes.
Yes.
Like that's you're not saying anything. This is a lot of puffery.
Yeah.
And empty air and all of that. But in the moment, it was a lot harder for a lot of people in the audience to see that, because the tone of it because the essentially uplifting is a word that comes to mind, but complimentary might be a better term.
Mm-hmm. Ego stroking.
Kind of message that was involved. The ego stroking kind of no, we are awesome, you're all awesome,
right?
USA was something that an awful lot of people responded to because an awful lot of people needed it.
Mm-hmm.
When you get used to several decades by that time
mm-hmm.
of being king of the hill,
mm-hmm.
and then you suffer one body blow after another body blow after another body blow, Vietnam, oil crisis, recession,
mm-hmm.
another oil crisis, another recession, and just all these humiliations. There is a needing to be important, needing to be powerful. It's an addiction.
Yes.
And giving anybody a hit of that is it's going to be very, very hard for people to remain rational
mm-hmm.
about it and cold about it.
Yes.
Cold. Maybe not rational is the right word, but to remain cold about it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we're sitting here talking about this as survivors of that era 40 years later,
mm-hmm.
with the benefit of a whole lot of hindsight and seeing exactly what came out of all of that.
Mm-hmm.
In the moment, the power of being told, no, we're awesome,
we're exceptional,
was cathartic in a
I don't know if cathartic
very,
is the right word. I would say it is the equivalent.
Energizing.
Yeah, it is the equivalent of a 5-hour energy drink when you're tired.
Yeah.
That works. And so he brings up the idea of freedom and dignity, which is really kind of interesting because he's actually pulling on old Roman terms of libertas and dignitas on that one. So points for stretching back to the classics there, Ron. Here's another one of his quotes from that same speech.
Well,
yeah.
Points to his speechwriter.
Yeah. Well,
not Ronnie. Points to his speechwriter.
I read an interview with several speechwriters, and they all said the same thing. Because people asked, they're like, okay, you wrote that special phrase, didn't you? He's like, yeah, I did. And like, so how come you don't get credit for it? He's like, it's not my speech, it's his. I wrote it for him, but it's his. And so speechwriters regularly say, no, I wrote it, but he delivered it, therefore it's his. He made it work. So,
okay.
So it's kind of like, Mariah Carey didn't write a lot of her songs, but those are her songs,
Yeah, okay. All right, fair.
So here's another one. It is my intention to curb the size and influence of the federal establishment and to demand recognition of the distinction between the powers granted to the federal government and those reserved to the states or to the people. And this, from what I could read, was the only real policy goal that he's stated plainly and clearly. And I don't think he has to outline a whole plan in his single speech here. I don't think that has to happen. But it's literally the only time he's spoken with any real specificity. And it's in such a way that's absolutely a dog whistle to racists and sexists, because, hey, states, you can fuck with people of color and women again. And the federal government isn't going to protect marginalized folks from various states' shittiness now. So
well, and in the context of him talking about states' rights, it's really, really important because of the times in which you and I are recording this.
Yes.
That we also, that one of us also point out that there are multiple images from his campaign in 79-80, and I think again in 84. Of him and other high-ranking, Republicans going full-on Confederate flag hugging, or standing in front of Confederate flags when they were campaigning in that part of the country.
Yep.
And at that point, it hadn't become quite as much of a thing where you'd see a Dixie battle flag in Indiana, like you'll see now, because it's taken on a whole different set of loading for other idiots in other parts of the country. But it's still a code. It was still very much a code that the Confederate movement
Mm-hmm.
Had an ally in that
Mm-hmm.
cadre.
Yeah. Well, he's from Hollywood, and Hollywood was absolutely stuffed full in the prior generation to him with apologists. I mean, even my beloved Buster Keaton was a huge apologist for the South.
Yeah.
So here's another quote of his. Above all, we must realize that no arsenal or no weapon in the arsenals of the world is so formidable as the will and moral courage of free men and women. It is a weapon of our adversaries in today's world. It is a weapon our adversaries in today's world do not have. It is a weapon that we as Americans do have. Let that be understood by those who practice terrorism and prey upon their neighbors. So we've got here vague threats to vague enemies, mention our weapons, but our moral fortitude more. Look out, y'all are on notice, but only vaguely so. Here's another quote, and this is actually the second specific policy thing he mentions. It would be fitting and good, I think, if on each inaugural day in the future years, it should be declared a day of prayer. So it is a specific course of action. It's very
Billy
culty,
Graham.
and it's a
No, not Billy Graham. Not Billy Graham. Who am I blaming? Oh, damn it.
Falwell.
Well, a little bit. Falwell.
Yeah,
Yeah. Fucking Falwell.
and this is
Fucking Baker. All of those
a
dickwads.
terrifying dog whistle
God damn it.
to the religious right.
Well, okay, and I'm going to throw this out here.
Mhm.
That's not a dog whistle. It's a religious right.
It's a bullhorn.
Well, one, it's a bullhorn. Two, you cannot separate the religious right from the Confederate movement in this fucking country. Because the whole reason, the whole goddamn reason that we have the problems we have right now in our country, speaking as a teacher for a second and a union rep for teachers,
Mm-hmm.
the reason that we have the problem we have in our country right now with charter schools stealing money from public school systems
Mm-hmm.
is because back in the 60s, fucking white people in the fucking South didn't want their kids to go to non-segregated schools, so they found the excuse of forming religious schools, which allowed them to exclude people who they didn't like.
Yeah, they excluded, these religious schools would exclude black people 20 times more often than they would exclude white people.
Well, yeah, and on top of that, they charged tuition,
Mm-hmm.
which created a financial barrier, which made it even more convenient to exclude black people because, who's going to have the money?
Redlining's the thing.
Redlining is the thing, and
that busing was trying to overcome, and then they reacted to that.
And then they figured out a way to game the system again, and that is the backbone
Mm-hmm.
of all of the fundamentalist right-wing Christian latching themselves onto the tit of the Republican Party bullshit
Mm-hmm.
that we've had to deal with. And Barry Goldwater
Mm-hmm.
was a lunatic, but he was entirely correct on one thing. And that was
Mm-hmm.
that if the Republican Party allowed itself to become allied with the religious right,
Mm-hmm.
it would never be able to separate itself.
Yeah.
Never.
I would
And
agree.
now, what do we see? We see professed Christians
Mm-hmm.
across this country literally saying that our current president has been chosen by God.
Right.
And they overlook and as now, speaking not only as a teacher and a public employee, but speaking as a Catholic,
Mm-hmm.
the idea that they would be open to considering that level of heresy says so much about how actually Christian they fucking are, that
it's branding, though.
It is disgusting.
They took up branding, and it
yeah.
had a confluence. It dovetailed with the rise of mass media on a national scale. It dovetailed with cable, because you had televangelism, and it's not like we didn't have this in the 30s, by the way. You did. Foursquare Church, you had Father Coughlin, you had all that. But, and they were just pro-fasci. These people are also that, but they're such grifters that they're making a shit ton of money on it. And if your brand is Jesus and it's making it so you've got a lot of money and you can, I don't know, say rape your secretary with no consequence, then why wouldn't you keep doing that? Like that's a good grift if you're a horrible human being. And if you can get somebody who used to be a movie star who somehow just keeps falling over backward into successful office, then of course you're going to latch on to that. Like it's
I love how your character is falling over backwards.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So here's the real kicker, though, right? I could actually pull on any inauguration speech and do this. That's kind of the point of inauguration speeches, all right? But Reagan did this throughout his presidency. Very little substance, lots of comfort. In fact, his predecessor, Jimmy Carter, got dragged for not doing that because he actually spoke the truth about America's State of the Union at the time. He said the State of the Union was weak. He's the only guy I can recall who's ever said it. And feel free to hit us up at Geek History Time on the Twitter and correct us. But you won't, because you can't, because he is the only one to have actually come out and done it. Gauntlet laid down.
Even during the Civil War.
Yeah.
Even during the Civil War, Lincoln didn't say that during his State of the Union.
Yeah, and prior to Woodrow Wilson, nobody delivered it in front of Congress either. They would just send it over as a letter.
That's a good point. Yeah, true.
But yeah, he gets dragged, and the very same thing that Reagan used to beat Carter over the head with and walk away with the presidency is that fact that he said it. And Reagan was like, no, I'm going to lie to them instead. Now, Reagan wasn't new in being substanceless in his speech. He was just really good at substanceless speech. And
it was a talent.
Yes, and that made him people's idea of what a good leader sounded and looked like. All image, no reality. He was a very effective marionette for playing Ubu. And that made it somehow more palatable to the passive middle, enabling them to be complicit in what he actually did instead of what he said he was doing. What we were then doing during his presidency was play acting. And really, that's what Larson is calling out in his comics. It's all play acting. It doesn't actually matter what's said or done. It just matters that it sounds like it makes sense. So here's an image and a caption, and push it as far into juxtaposition as possible to grossly overstate the absurdity of it and finally show us what we're doing with our own grotesque reflections. Hey, look at me, everybody. I'm a cowboy. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Like, do you know how fucking dark that particular cartoon was? He's wearing the cowboy hat because they're all eating the cowboy. Yeah. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Yeah. Like, look at that juxtaposition. And when you are in a world where everybody's play acting at democracy, play acting at this moral high ground, and everybody in office is play acting at it too, it's all so absurd. It's all marionette stuff. So what does that bring about? What does that encourage in an artist? Howdy, howdy, howdy. Like, let's juxtapose the reality of 7 or 8 vultures sitting around a corpse, juxtapose it with, like, a kid playing dress up. And that shit's funny.
Yeah.
So all of this led to a greater...
Sick, Harold. Sick.
Yeah.
Like, you want to talk about dark cartoons.
Mm-hmm. Cannibalistic cows. Like...
Just...
Yeah,
it's the same thing. Yeah, or in a similar vein, oh relax, chicken soup is good for a cold, and it isn't anybody we know.
Yes. Yes. Like, you can go back through and find some dark shit in Gary Larson's stuff. Now, all of this led to a greater sense of paradoxical certainty and uncertainty at the same time. The world was edging closer and closer to nuclear holocaust being a reality. Technology that was supposed to keep us all safer was just as dangerous as the madman at the switch. And even the movies reflected that, like in War Games. War Games, by the way, this movie absolutely influenced Ronald Reagan to write NSDD 145, the first presidential order to specifically deal with computer security. I'm going to say that again because that's where we were. The president watched a movie about a kid using a modem to hack the national defense grid, and he made policy because of the movie he saw. That's absurd.
Well, okay, so is the president, getting legislation passed for cleaning up the canning industry because of a novel everybody read.
I disagree. Not everybody read it. First of all, literacy was not as big. Second of all, a novel is wildly different than a movie.
I feel like you're engaging in genre ghettoism by saying that.
Here's why I'm gonna push a little further with this. That novel was written with a specific political intent. This movie was made to entertain, and it was seizing on something that was new and entertaining at the time. I think those are two different purposes. I would say that if I said simply by the virtue of the novel, this one has papers and this one has celluloid, yeah, I think you would be right.
Okay.
But I think, I mean, Upton Sinclair was absolutely a muckraker. He was grinding that axe. Whereas the guy who did War Games, he was making a movie for a studio for entertainment.
Okay. Yes.
I mean, the Jungle was a socialist polemic. Like the second half of the Jungle is like, here's why socialism is better.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And what it, and if you want to talk about absurdism, it was meant to be a socialist polemic. Up with the workers. Look at how horrible the working conditions are, and the legislation that actually got passed as a result of it was the FDA being created because, oh my God, you mean there's rat poop in my food?
Yeah.
So, but what I'm going to argue again a little bit, and I see where you're coming from, but I'm going to continue to push a little bit on it. I'm going to go to William Gibson.
Okay.
And that is science fiction, which is what it's. I mean, it's speculative. It wasn't crazy science fiction, but it was science fiction. War Games brought up to the forefront by virtue of, if we have the system that's being run by a computer, what are the ramifications of that? I'm going to spin this out in order to tell this story. Until that science fiction screenwriter sat down to write that out, nobody had come up with that policy because nobody had thought of it.
But how could they not have thought about it if they'd gotten all the mainframe computers on board in NORAD? Like, we had been updating our computerization there. Whereas if you go back to the Jungle, everybody knew the meat was rancid. I mean, shit, the meat for the Spanish-American War killed more people than Cuban bullets. Yeah. That was a known thing, and then it became like, okay, you've got this groundswell. It wasn't just the Jungle that led to that. Whereas over here, you've got War Games, and modems are pretty new as far as consumers go, and all that kind of stuff. But we knew that things were computerized.
Everybody knew things were computerized, but what was nascent at that point was we're getting into talking about phone freaks and computer students, programming students, going through the telephone company's dumpster to get numbers,
right?
And the thing is, NORAD and DARPA and all of those people had been connecting those computers together, but nobody had thought about the ramifications of, well, if we're doing all of this through the phone lines, and everybody and all of a sudden now consumers have access to a modem, nobody had made that jump in the same way that science fiction authors
Mm-hmm.
failed to conceive of what the World Wide Web was going to look like or what it was going to do. It is very, very hard
Mm-hmm.
for anybody, especially anybody like the kind of people who work for NORAD,
Mm-hmm.
or any of the organizations that are doing that kind of work. There is a definite tendency to lose the forest for the trees.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the thing that I'm working on. This is my project, and over here we have this other person's project.
Right.
And seeing the second and third order ramifications of stuff
Mm-hmm.
is one of those places where historically I think it is more notable where everybody gets it right
Mm-hmm.
than when they are completely blindsided by some new development.
Mm-hmm.
And when a science fiction author comes along and says, okay, well, we have this thing and we have this thing. What if I throw these two things together and, oh, hey, look, here's this story I can tell. And then all of a sudden, everybody watching it who knows anything about how those things work goes, oh,
Okay.
shit.
Okay.
So,
I would still say that a guy who grew up making movies, being influenced by a movie screening, and then making policy because of that, when he's got an intelligence community right there. I mean, his vice president used to be the head of the CIA.
I totally get what you're saying there.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that to try to defend him.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it meaningful to point out that, this is one of those things that science fiction as a genre
Mm-hmm.
has done, like H.G. Wells coming up with the idea of the submarine.
Sure.
And the level of devastation that could be carried out by that.
Okay.
Star Trek and cell phones.
Right. Yeah.
Is just kind of I think that movie getting made and being like, oh wait, hold on, people can do that? Okay, we got to do something about that.
Well, and I think that movie getting made, by the way, the thesis statement of that movie was at the very end was the only way to win is not to play. Going right back to the prisoner's dilemma.
Yeah.
Interestingly. So here, let's talk about the day after then.
For a little bit of uplift and cheerfulness.
So
great.
First, after the day after, so it'd be the day after, there was a bit of an all-star debate on ABC's Viewpoint, in which Carl Sagan was debating with a few other people, and he made this point. He said, quote, "Imagine a room awash in gasoline, and there are two implacable enemies in that room. One of them has 9,000 matches, the other 7,000 matches. Each of them is concerned about who's ahead and who's stronger." So Carl Sagan is pointing out how absurd everything is. And we've gone well past any kind of morality at this point, well past any kind of common sense. And secondly, I'd point out that Reagan was impacted by what he saw on TV. He saw an advanced screening of it and wrote in his diary that the film was, quote, "very effective and left me greatly depressed," and that the made-for-TV movie changed his mind on the prevailing policy of a nuclear war. Not scientists, not ethics professors, not experts. TV.
Yeah.
So while this is happening, and he's being influenced by movies and television, the movie star was, the not quite a star movie star, the belief in American exceptionalism was on the rise, and the closer we got to annihilation, the more we felt exceptional. And interestingly, the difference in terms of partisanship approval was greater under Reagan than under any president in the modern era. Any.
Wait.
Yeah, I know.
Wait.
Yep. I checked. And even Obama had a smaller gap.
Okay, so
between
are we
people
just
who
leaving?
like,
Are we just leaving out the tangerine in the room, or?
Well, yeah, because his presidency's not over yet, so you can't actually measure that. Yeah,
Oh, yeah. Okay,
yeah. So
okay.
on average,
Fair
people
enough.
were
Fair enough.
yeah.
Then all right.
So on average, people are more and more confident.
That's,
What?
well, I was just going to say that, like, no, I'm pretty sure we have a record setter in office right now.
Yeah, probably.
So
People are more confident in our survival and our supremacy the sharper and more nihilistic Reagan's rhetoric toward the Soviet Union got. Oh, we're going to survive this, the closer he gets us to death. Again, absurd. There's another place where overwrought language leads people to showing greater enthusiasm and support, by the way, which was really ascendant in the 80s.
pro wrestling.
Yep.
Of course.
Of course.
Of course.
Now, I wouldn't call pro wrestling theater of the absurd, as there is actually a structure to it. It has a morality play aspect to it. However, there is a shit ton of absurdity in wrestling, and the play acting is absolutely there. So much so that they actually cut themselves to add to the drama of the fake battle to make it look. It's so convoluted, but it's there. It's absolutely there.
Well, and yeah, it can't be theater of the absurd
Mm-hmm.
because despite all of the absurdity, not only are there structures,
Mm-hmm.
but those structures are kind of ironclad.
Yes, they are.
Like the story arc.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you are the one looking at the beginning of a particular storyline,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say you probably have about a 75 or 80% chance
Yeah.
of being able to predict, okay, so step 2 is going to be this.
Yep.
Step
Somewhere
4
down
or
the
5
road,
is going to be
this'll happen.
somewhere
Yeah.
down here, this is going to happen. And then it's all going to end up with that guy and that guy
Mm-hmm.
actually being, allies at the very end. They're going to wind up coming together. And that dude over there who we're not paying any attention to right now is actually going to be the one who gets turned into the villain of the whole piece.
Yes.
Like, because just like a soap opera, just like Jidaigeki,
Mm-hmm.
just like any of those forms of media, that narrative structure
Mm-hmm.
is critical, and it is inexorable. And so it's in some ways the antithesis of theater of the absurd.
Uh-huh. That's absolutely true. Yeah. Theater of the absurd, the literal antithesis of it, I think, is improv combat. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So there is a president who is absolutely playing the part of being the president, and a country that is absolutely buying into that part, and nobody is really making any choices of any substance while pretending at having morality at the highest levels. And meanwhile, Gary Larson is cartooning and pointing out how silly just about anything he puts in his panels is. He was nearly in 2,000 papers, like I said, about 1900, taking home award after award after award. There were no recurring characters. There were just recurring archetypes. There was a tremendous appreciation for the quick in and out nature of it, paired with its subversive nature when it came to the agreed upon norms of language and behavior. So he's pointing out the absurdity of our lives at a time where our lives are increasingly absurd. And that's where I'm going to leave this episode, because I actually got to talk about Gary Larson. And then we'll bring him up to the next one. So where can people find you on the social media?
On the social media, I can be found on Twitter at ehblaylock.
Mm-hmm.
We collectively can be reached on the Twitter at Geek History Time.
Mm-hmm.
I individually can be found on Instagram at ehblaylock,
Mm-hmm.
or Mr. Blaylock, Mr. Blaylock, which is also where you can find me on TikTok until such time as the app gets shut down as an organ of the Chinese government.
By an organ of the Russian government.
By an organ of, now, yeah. So So where can they find you if they want to yell at you about having gotten Camus wrong?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at DaHarmony, two H's in the middle there. And you can find me on every Sunday night with Johnny Taylor doing Calling It in the Ring on twitch.tv/Calling It in the Ring. And then you can also find me on Tuesday nights at twitch.tv/Capital Puns. And that noise that you heard was me horribly doing a terrible job of trying to bring up my TikTok, because Capital Punishment does have a TikTok, but I'll be damned if I can find our account. So I'll have to find that in the interim. You kids and all your book learning. Anyway, so for A Geek History of Time, I'm Damian Harmony.
And I'm Ed Blaylock. And until next time, let's get this baby off the ground.